You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hey, people-centric leaders, we're really excited about the topic today. It'd be kind of weird if we jumped on and said we are not excited about the topic today. That would be different, right? I mean, so if we jumped on and we just said like, hey, today is a topic that nobody has asked for and no one wants, I think everybody would just be like, you just shut it off. That'd be kind of weird, right?
Except for I think we have done that before.
We did.
We have.
What topic did we do that nobody wanted?
Probably org design or accountability, things like that it's like nobody really wants to talk about this, but we have to. We've got to talk about it. It's important.
We like to talk about org design. Bethany and I specifically, I don't know, Diana, if you'd fit into this. And the topic today is not org design, just so if you don't touch the button. But I get it. Like if we could do a whole podcast, Bethany and I could do a whole podcast on just org design because it is one of the coolest things that we do that nobody knows how powerful it is, and it really makes a big difference. But that's not what the topic is today.
I like difficult conversations. The ones that are scary and nobody really wants to do. Those are my favorite.
Or like you're gonna when to quit your job was a really popular one. We did that one, and I think that got a lot of people like, oh, that's interesting.
And awkward.
And awkward too, as we told our clients, hey, you should play our podcast for other people. And they opened it up and said, why you should quit your job. And why did you tell me to give this to our people? Why would you do that? So we've learned a lot of lessons in the 200 and something plus episodes that we've done here.
We gotta have the hard conversations. We gotta do the hard stuff. No one else is.
You got to break some eggs. You know what I mean?
I don't think today's topic is all that hard though. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. It's not.
No. And let's transition into that because today's topic is transitioning into your next role, transitioning and succession planning. Did you see what I did there? I tied it together with what we were talking about.
It was good.
Thank you.
Transition to transitions.
To transitioning into your next role. So let's talk about what do we mean by a transition, what we're going to talk about, and we're thinking about a transition, not just from your job. Like you might be frontline person and you might be thinking, I'd like to get into my next role. I'd like to get promoted. I'd like to move up the ladder, or I'd like to be challenged a little more. That's a transition into a different kind of a job. It could be a transition out of a job. Maybe you're ready to leave or retire or leave, or you're going to move up and somebody below you has to take that role and step into it. That's transitioning into a job. We also call it succession planning, but succession planning is a little different than transitioning. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk about maybe you own a company and maybe you need to transition the company, or maybe you haven't thought of that. What are you going to do with your company when you're done with it, and what makes that valuable? And then we're even going to talk a little bit about what if it's family owned? What if it's a family owned business? And so there's going to be something in this for everybody in your career, whether you're frontline person trying to figure out how to get into the next job, or you own a business and thinking about how the heck do you get out of this thing? How do you get out of this crazy trap that you've built for yourself? So we've got an all-star team today. Not to say that the people who are not on this podcast today are not all-stars. They also are all-stars. Anybody that we have on our team is an all-star. Let me just say that. But these two people are our best people. I'm just going to say that because the other people are not on it right now. Diana, would you agree that you are the best person at People Centric? Go ahead. And then we'll let Bethany jump in.
I really hate to say this, but I am probably the worst. I think I'm the weakest link of our team.
Oh, wow.
So, our team's really good. They're really good.
This is super helpful for our next performance discussion, actually.
Yeah, I can't wait.
This is super helpful.
I totally disagree with you, Diana.
Yeah. I'm just saying our team is amazing and they all know more than I know, which I love. And I learn stuff from them every day. So I don't think that I am the best at People Centric.
Well, all your job is co-founder, COO. So I need you to raise your game a little bit then.
Isn't it the job of a good leader to create more leaders?
Well, then in a very real way, then maybe you're great at your job.
There you go.
There you go. That's it. Because you're looking around everybody else. So what Diana kind of says in summary is that everybody else is great, which is her fault. That's what Diana is kind of summarizing, I think.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, everybody. Got it. Yeah. And then the fearless leader of our engagement team, Bethany Taff, is here, our engagement manager. Bethany, tell us why you are indispensable to our team and why you are the secret wind beneath their wings.
Yeah, if I'm not here, everything would just blow up. I'm just kidding. That's not true at all. That's not true at
Thanks
all.
for
It
leaning
feels
into it. I
true.
liked it.
It feels true. It
Yeah.
feels like when you're not here, things go sideways.
No, and that's not true at all for all the same reasons Diana said, because I think that we hire great people on our team and they're all super talented and we all do lean on each other a lot. So I think yeah, I don't know if that answers the question that you were actually wanting to know, Don. I'm not
Well,
sure.
we like to have a little fun at the beginning. So yes, I mean, I like to ask impossible to answer questions.
Possible questions.
Watch you both squirm. It's fun just to watch for a second.
I think he only does that to you and me too.
I think so. No,
Hmm.
that's not true. We've watched him do that to everybody.
I like to watch everyone squirm, everyone dance for me. Yes, it's fun. Um, yes, we do have an amazing team. I love our team, all the things. And I think our team has talked a lot. So like let's transition into the transition topic here a little bit. Like even on our team, we're a small company. There's 6 of us right now on our team. And like some of our team members who are all very high performing individuals, they are all thoroughbred horses. They run very, very quickly that we all have to keep up with each other on a regular basis. They have asked us and said, "Hey, challenge us. Like, what do we need to learn new? What's the new areas for development? How do I maybe not transition into even a new job because at People Centric, there's not that many places to go from that standpoint. I mean, as we grow, there might be, but I mean, that's, you know what I mean. But how do I transition myself into being able to expand my role or expand what I do or expand my knowledge? And so we've had to think a little bit about that. So let's kind of start. Let's start with that. So, how do you, as a manager, start to transition your team, and then why? Maybe why is it important? We can go either direction on that. Let's start with that question.
Well, I mean, I think we all know that having a backup or having people that can also do your job or having people that know how to do the things that you know how to do is really helpful in work. So you can take a vacation, so that you can have time off, so that you can delegate. All of those things like are really helpful. And I think recently we've started to see a strange phenomena of some people like hoarding that knowledge and feeling like if I don't tell anybody what I'm doing, if people don't know how to do my job, then I become indispensable. And I think that that's the wrong way to think about it. And so I don't know where I was going with that. I don't know how to answer your question.
No, that's good. I think that's really true.
Okay.
We do see people that hoard information. They
Yeah.
seem like, well, if I tell everybody else, then they might not need me.
Yeah.
And is hoarding information. So like why transition information to your employees or maybe why not transition information to your employees? One of those reasons might be job security. If
Yeah.
I'm the only one that knows that, I mean, is that true? Is it
I
job security to be the only one that knows how to do something?
I mean, it works sometimes. It does work sometimes. I think that there are some situations where we work with clients and yeah, they have somebody that they have really made indispensable or that person has made themselves indispensable and then they do get afraid of, well, if we lose this person, then what are we going to do? We don't really have a backup plan. And so, yeah, sometimes it does work. But I think there's also probably more fear in that than there needs to be usually. And so it just puts the organization as a whole in kind of a bad position. So yeah, sometimes it does work.
I mean, that is really how I've kept my job this long. Cloak and dagger secrecy.
Yeah. Nobody knows how to do some things that Diana does. That is really true. And so we're all we're putting out an SOS. Please help us.
Help us.
Help us. Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. Why don't sometimes managers transition things to their employees? And we've talked about delegation, which we're kind of in that's a little bit into that. And job security, I think, is one. I can think of situations where people have been fired who gave away or been let go because they did let other people on their team know how to do what they do, and they made themselves indispensable. And the company was like, "Sweet, you're indispensable. Now I'm going to let you go." Like I can think of companies who have done the bad thing and let somebody go. I think that when companies do that, it's incredibly damaging to the culture, and because other people see that, they notice that, and then they
Hmm.
start hoarding information. And they don't pass information. They don't communicate. They start playing games, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that.
Yeah. I was going to say, I also think in some cases, people just aren't thinking about it. And that's maybe another reason they do it, especially if you are not as far along in your career and maybe you are in a manager role or a supervisor role or something like that. I think that you're just thinking about your role right now and figuring out how to develop, and you're not thinking longer term to think, oh, well, I need to probably get somebody developed who could do this role in the future. I think you're just kind of figuring out how to be a leader at that in that moment. And sometimes you're not just not even thinking about the value of the long-term development of the team below you. So
Yeah, you get lost in the day-to-day stuff, right? And you forget, like,
yeah.
maybe I should be passing on some of this knowledge.
Hmm.
Um, I spoke to a business owner recently who was talking about transitioning his knowledge, and he said, I've got 50 years of work experience that I need to transition to my team, and I need to figure out a way to give all of that knowledge to them and then give them the job so that they have the responsibility so they can run it as well as me. And it's just struck me hearing that clearly stated. I'm like, that approach, I could see where that would seem logical, but it's also impossible. Like, I'm going to tell you all the things you need to know. And once you know all the things, then I'm going to give you the opportunity to do the thing that I just taught you.
It's
But
like,
life doesn't work like that.
yeah, and you waited 50 years to tell anybody anything. I think that's the big struggle is like, wow, that's a lot of information to pass on in, maybe a year or two to now say, I'm going to give you 50 years of knowledge. So I hope you remember all of it.
Yeah. We're going to
It's
meet every
mapping
other week.
really
And I'm
hard.
going to, for half an hour, I'm just going to start to unload stuff. Here's years 1 through 4. Here's the knowledge I'm going to give you. Yeah, it's a lot. So it's something that you have to, as a manager, you have to constantly be thinking, how can I challenge my employees? How can I give them my problems? How can I? We talk sometimes about Diana's got the giggles in the background. We got if you're on YouTube, you can only see us
Okay.
talk. Diana, what's wrong?
Just
You
the
okay?
way Bethany said, and you waited 50 years.
There's
It
a
got me
Sorry.
because it's so true. And the way she said it was just like accusatory and also questioning. I don't know. It was just like the best. It was classic Bethany. And I,
So sorry.
Sometimes we talk about
yeah,
fierce Bethany because Bethany is so sweet and so nice until she isn't. And then she will drop a line like a truth bomb on you and she just like hits you hard with it right between the eyes and you don't expect it. And she delivers it very nicely, but it cuts more deeply than you would expect. It's like, yeah, it does. It hits you. Good job,
Okay.
Bethany.
Yeah, you're welcome. Sorry about that.
No, you get those are good, valuable. That's good. It's a good example of strength. You're transitioning your knowledge. You're giving it's like you waited 50 years to do it. Like that's a great point. Like don't do that. So if you are not 50 years in your career and you're listening to this and you are not passing on some of the things that you know to your employees, maybe you should start now because if you wait until you're 50 years into it, you've got a lot of stuff to be able to pass along. We see sometimes when we're talking in workshops and seminars and conferences and things that we do, we'll talk about what I like to call vanilla ice leadership, which vanilla ice leadership is if there was a problem, I'll solve it, which is like managers who say like, I see the problem, so I'm going to hoard the problem and I'm going to take it into my office. I really like to solve problems because I've done this. Like if you kind of know the answer, you know the things that you need to do to attack it, you start going, your mind starts to jump on it, and then you take it and you hoard the problems, and then you disappear for 3 days in your office and you work on the problem, and then you emerge with the solution to everybody. And then you tell everybody the solution, and then you get the crossed arms of people resisting you, right? You think you're like Moses coming down from the mountain to deliver like the answers to everybody else. But really, what's happening is you just disappeared for 3 days and you're just coming back and now you're changing something and nobody knows why you're doing that. And one of the things we encourage is give your people your problems, give them opportunities to solve their own things because that's how you learn. That's the real way you learn. Nobody learns from just saying, like, here's all the stuff I know. Just sit down around me and I will wax philosophical about all the things I've learned. That doesn't work, doesn't usually work like that.
yeah. And I think people get really tied up in their own like institutional knowledge. Like but I know all of these things from all of this experience. And if somebody isn't here to tell them how not to do something or why we did something, then that institutional knowledge is gone. And I think there's some merit to that, but the institutional knowledge that I had 10 years ago is no longer relevant today. And so I have to keep reminding myself that like the world is different. And while it may not have worked back then, or there was a reason we did it a way we did back then, the times are different, the technology is different, the people are different, the circumstances are different. So like the institutional knowledge isn't quite as important as maybe the value that a lot of people place on it.
Yeah, that's well said. That's really well said. So the problem is right now in the US particularly is that we have a shortage of labor. And I know that like if you read the news and things like that right now, like people, it's kind of funny because I saw in the news like the labor market, we had like 100 and something thousand new jobs last month. And they said it's a slowing labor market. The labor market's slowing, which I was laughing at a little bit because like 5 years ago, somebody said 100,000 jobs, like, oh my gosh, labor market's coming back. It's great. Like we've just seen a labor market that's been just crazy because there's literally a shortage of people. Like we don't have enough. We haven't been making enough babies in the US for a long time. Like we just don't have enough bodies to do the work. So unemployment levels are actually below the number of available jobs. There's a gap by about 1.5 to 2 million jobs that will be unfulfilled because there's literally not enough people to do those jobs. So then we're leaning into technology to try to replace those kinds of jobs. And then people see the headlines, oh, technology is replacing some frontline jobs, and now we don't have entry level jobs, and that's creating some problems of like, well, where do I get into these things? So like, let's go that direction now. So if you're an employee and you're thinking like, how do I transition? How do I get into the market? How do I get myself on the career path? Last week I was at a publishing conference and I talked about generations at work. And I had like 5 different like Gen Z younger employees who came to me who said like, how do I get on the track? How do I get on the track? How do I transition myself into the next role if my manager's not putting me in that position?
I mean, I think that's really hard. I don't know if I think there's lots of like professional development, right, that you could do externally. But if you're not asking the right questions internally, then I think you're missing something unless your goal is not to stay within that industry or within that organization or something like that. But otherwise, I think you're doing yourself a disservice not to just start the conversation internally and say, what does the future look like for this business? And what are the gaps and the things that I need to learn? What do you see? And hopefully organizations are having those kinds of developmental conversations anyways. But what we found out is a lot of them aren't. And so if that's not happening within your organization and you are more frontline or you would like to develop up into your organization, start asking questions of maybe your boss and your boss's boss and all, and saying like, where are we going in general? What is our growth path within the organization? And ask specifically about how you can develop. And I think that's kind of the first step that I would take.
I like that. So I like that. And you kind of hinted something for the employers too, is making sure you're talking to your people and telling them what you don't think they're ready for.
Right.
We talked to a lot of managers who are like, no, our people aren't ready for that. And it's like, what are they not? What would they need to know or experience to get them ready for that? And do they know that they don't know or experience that? Like I would let them make those decisions themselves, or I would give them this power, or I'd promote them if they did X, Y, and Z. Are you sharing what X, Y, and Z are? And that's low-hanging fruit that most organizations just frankly don't do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
I think it's important for employees to also state that intent, like, hey, leader, I want to become a leader too. I want this position. What do I have to do to get there? And I think if you're just really clear about what you want, then it kind of forces the manager to be clear about what you're missing and what they need from you too.
yeah, and so that what you just brought up is kind of a generational thing too. I think that's going to trigger some generational things. So you're thinking about like who is asking that question, right? So I'm just imagining the Gen Z person going to a baby boomer and saying like, how do I get promoted into your job? And the average baby, and I'm stereotyping horribly right now.
Right.
Use your bootstraps.
Yeah, yeah. Was that your boomer voice? What was that?
That was my old timey pull up your bootstraps. The voice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Get yourself up
It
there.
was good, right?
Yeah, it was pretty. I was like, wow, Diana just aged like 30 years just right in front of us. I just saw it.
There you go.
Just saw it happen. Yeah, and I think there's a little bit like I've heard like boomers be annoyed by that question. I've heard Xers be annoyed by that question. To put myself under the bus, I'm a Gen Xer, and I've heard people get annoyed. It's like, well, why are you talking about getting promoted? Get good at your current job before you talk about getting promoted. Well, that's also feedback, by the way, and that's terrible feedback to give in that moment of like, well, you suck at your current job, and I haven't been telling you that, but it's funny that you asked for promotion. Like, I should be telling you those problems up front. So, I mean, I'm trying to say all that to say the tip to the leader who gets that question is give a little grace on that, even if you're annoyed of why is that you're asking for your next seat. Like lean into it. It's a development opportunity. They're taking control and ownership of their career path. That's good for you. That's when you should lean into that and give some feedback on it. That's really good. What if you are an employee and your boss just isn't very receptive to your ideas? I mean, that's like that was a question I got. I had two Gen Z employees, and they introduced themselves. Hi, I'm Gen Z employees at a company, and they said, our company is trying to figure out how to maneuver in these ever-changing quick times of technology and AI and all these other things. And we are of that generation. Like this is just life to us. These aren't changes to us. What you're talking about and trying to maneuver are things that we're already there. And we have ideas for what we could do with it, but no one's even asking us. No one's listening. And when we do try to raise our hand and say, hey, we've got some ideas, we get patted on the head and said like, oh, look at you, you're so cute. Thanks for the idea. And then they're ignored. What advice do we have for them? Just give up, walk away.
Bethany shrugged and was like, good luck. No.
I don't
Good
know.
luck.
Diana, what wisdom do you have?
I mean, I was just gonna say that I know in my past career, I've been in a similar situation. I've seen this happen. I've been patted on the head before. I've been told my ideas are crazy. I think you just have to, in those moments, recognize that they're not there yet, right? They're not ready to actually make a change, and you have to meet them where they are. So I think you can ask some more questions. You can try to understand what they're struggling with. You can, kind of dig into that conversation a little bit, but then also recognize like you might not be able to change their mind. And that means they're not ready. And then you have to decide, are you okay with them not being ready? And are you okay with them not making those changes? Or does it conflict with your values? And are you going to be mad about that forever and then misaligned forever?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, and I would add too, I think it's, I do think every generation does have good ideas as they come into the workforce and has a new perspective and ways that they're thinking about things. But also every new generation that comes into the workforce doesn't know everything. You don't know everything too. And so I think listen to the wisdom and knowledge and of your elder work peers or bosses or whatever, and just listen to them, ask for their experience and their insight too, and help try to understand what life looks like to them, and understand what work looks like to them, and ask them for advice. And I think whenever you kind of show that respect and honor, to the people who are a little bit ahead of you, then they're going to also be more likely to hear your insights as well, and your ideas and things like that. And so I think what I've seen work is show them that honor first. Don't just come in hot like you know everything and that all of your ideas are going to solve all of the problems, because you might be missing something too. There might be some things that are valuable and might work, but you might be missing something. And so that's where I would start.
I'm going to try to ignore that when you said listen to your elders and you looked right at me. I'm going to try to ignore that you just did that.
We're on Zoom. How do you know I was
I can
looking
tell.
at
I can tell because when Diana was talking, I can see where you're looking, and I can see where you're looking when I know where my window is on your
you?
screen.
Okay.
I can tell, Bethany. I could tell.
I
But
mean,
that's
you're
great
not
advice.
that old yet.
No, I'm
We're
young.
all fine.
We're all fine. I'm youngster. I mean, I do get injuries that I can't explain. Like my thumb hurt for a couple days. Like I don't know why it just did, But yeah, that's another topic. I think that's great advice. I like the words coming in hot. Like if you come in hot And if your leader thinks you are talking about, I want a promotion because I want to move up in the company because I want, all they're hearing is like, you're being selfish right now. You're thinking about yourself. And that as a human, it doesn't matter what the conversation is. We're all going to resist that conversation. If somebody else is saying, I want all these things and you have to help me get here because it's what I want, then that's going to be difficult. If you can position it and ask questions, if you can approach it with some curiosity of not just I'm going to make these demands of listen to me because I can lead us forward to this. If it's done with curiosity and asking questions of saying, what are the things that our company are struggling with? What could I do? What would you wish that we could do better that would help the team? Those kinds of questions, then it turns out, well, you want that too. Maybe we want that. And that's what you're trying to get to is that we instead of you want that. How do we work on this together? So, okay, that's good. So we've given some good advice for managers. You should want to transition. You should be passing on that information. Don't wait till you get 50 years into your career, right? And then if you're an employee and you want to transition to the next opportunity, don't go in soft or don't go in hard, go in soft, go in quiet. Kick the door down, beat it down, get in there. No, no, no. Oh, don't do that. Okay. Sorry, I got it wrong.
Yeah, wrong.
Wrong approach. Go in there quietly, ask some questions, go in there with some curiosity and and see if the other person leans in. And by the way, you may have to try a couple times, employees. You may catch somebody at the wrong time and they may not be open to, they may not want that feedback right then and there, or they may not ask for your help. You may need to let that cook for a little while. So have a little bit of nuance into your approach, a little finesse if you will. Let some time work for you, which is sometimes hard when you're younger in your career. I know that's something I've learned as I've gotten later in my career of how to use time in your favor. But sometimes things need to marinate for a minute before things change. Let's talk a little bit about transitioning like a business overall. So like if you own a business and you're going to transition the business, what things do you need to think about?
I don't know, business owner. What things would you think about if you were going to transition your business?
Don't throw it back at me. That's
Well,
not
I'm
what
throwing it
about.
back at you.
Don't
It
throw
just
it back.
makes sense.
It makes sense.
Well, we see a lot of these. So, I mean, like some of the things that I think about, like we talk to so many businesses who are thinking about transitioning at some point, and the mistake that I see most common is like they try to transition the business when they're ready to transition the business. And that could happen when like, okay, well now I'm of a certain age or I'm ready to go do something, and it's like you were expecting it, but you never did it. And now there's a moment like, okay, I'm ready to get out. Now like let me get out. And that's too late. You can't, there's so many things you can't do in the last minute. It's very hard. You're not in a good position. Or that time may not come by your choice. It could come from a health event. It could come from a life change. There's lots of things that we've seen that suddenly make somebody think about, okay, I'm going to transition the business. So you have to get ahead of it because here's the problem. If you own a business and you are a key cog in the business and you're going to go sell that business, the business is worth less if you're gone. If you are a key cog in it, the business is worth less if you are gone. And the person buying the business, if they are at all savvy, are going to ask the question, well, what do you do in the business as the business owner? And you're like, well, I do all the sales and I do all of the products development and I do all of that stuff. Their next question is going to be, are you coming with us on this business? Do I get you? And then you're trading your business for a job potentially. It's not worth as much. The businesses that are worth the most are the ones where it doesn't need the owner. Like the new owner could come in and have all the people that are all doing the things that they were already doing. That business is worth a lot more. What about preparing people inside the business for taking on that transition? Because that's kind of like saying, I'm going to go out on the market, I'm going to sell the business, which is difficult. How do you transition people into like top executive roles? What kinds of things should they think about? And don't just say, Don, well, you're a top executive. What do you think, Diana?
We'll let you pass on that one since we have experience helping people do this. Yeah, I think all of that is part of that long-term planning, that watching people do their job really well and determining who wants it, who's going to be great at it, who has the innate abilities that I see in someone who I want to take over my role, and what other things could I train them and teach them along the way. I think it's important to think about, I call it the hit by a bus scenario because I don't want to say that I'm retiring or leaving or anything like, well, what if I am hit up by a bus? Who is going to take it over for me? What have I passed on? What is easy to take over? What is not? what things am I doing that other people could be doing? What things am I doing that no one else can do? And how do I make sure that I'm passing that knowledge down, documenting that knowledge, getting it somewhere so that if I am hit by a bus, someone can take on my job and not disrupt the company too much.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think sometimes, obviously, would recommend you thinking like really specifically, but I also know that sometimes that freaks leaders out to say, well, what if I put all my eggs in this basket and then they don't stick around? And so I think that's a hard question to grapple with. I think so. First of all, like if you have people within your organization that you're thinking about, again, make sure you're actually kind of floating this out to them to say, hey, I'm thinking about you for this role. That doesn't mean you're promising the role to them, by the way. That's the other thing. But I think maybe having that conversation just to make sure that that's even something that they're interested in and thinking about. And it's great for them to know that you're thinking about it for them too. I think that's one of the big mistakes that we see often is that there might be people within the organization, but they haven't had any kind of conversation with them about that because they're afraid that they're promising this to them, or they're like, well, they probably know. I mean, I'm passing stuff along to them, or whatever it may be. And so then there's just a lot of uncertainty behind the kind of putting all of their eggs into that one basket. And then the other thing that I would say with that too is then don't just put all your eggs in that one basket. Like have a few baskets, we talk about like some leadership development programs that we've helped install within lots of organizations too. And so make sure you're developing potential leaders within your business at a larger rate. And some of the other things that I think we hear about when we talk about that with people and business owners and leaders is, again, they worry about, okay, well, what if we invest all of this time and effort and money into these people and then they actually leave because we've done all of this for them? And I think, our approach is like, well, is that the worst thing? I think they're going to speak really highly of you as an employer and as an organization, and they're going to recommend people to you because they know how much you care and invest in your employees. And then the other side of it is, so you're probably going to get great referrals for other employees, future talent. And if not, and they actually like stick around because you have invested in them, that's pretty amazing. And you have a really big pool of talent to kind of draw from as you're thinking about transitioning your business. So that's my input on it.
I like that a lot. We see a lot of companies that talk about succession planning and they have something down on paper, but they don't actually do the succession part. It's kind of like strategic planning. I did the plan, but I'm not executing it. I did the succession plan, but I'm not executing that. I'm not passing it on. I'm not telling people. Because if I go to somebody and I say, hey, I'm thinking about you for my role someday, they're probably going to tell me where they think they're going to also be missing the gaps. I also thought something struck me. I don't think I've ever said this before, too, and it goes back to Diana, what you were saying. Like, it's nice to be able to transition the knowledge, to write things down, to pass things along. And what I was just thinking to myself was like, especially in executive level positions, um, most of this, that's not how we learn that stuff. Like most of the experienced executives, if I sit down and say, like, where did you learn how to do that? They can't say, well, I had somebody that actually wrote down this 3-page document for me, and I know to do this, and this. They probably learned it by being thrown in the deep end and saying, like, you got to swim here, you got to figure this out. And they might have done that completely alone with nobody around in dead of night, and it was terrifying and horrible to do that. Or hopefully they did it with like a coach, sitting on the side of the pool, helping them or encouraging them, or maybe even somebody in the water with them, helping them to encourage. But I mean, we don't pass on our knowledge by like actually saying the things. You can't just say it. Here's all the things I know, and then people do it. You have to put people in the positions to experience. That's how adults learn. We learn through experiences. So, I mean, that just struck me in terms of like the transition of things, because I've heard with several business owners like, oh, I just need to write everything down that's in my head and then I'll just give it away to anybody. And I've never seen that work, and nor have I ever seen anybody who's transitioning into that like ask for that. Like, yes, Diane, I need you to write down the password someday for stuff, and how do we do payroll? Like, that'd be good. I don't know how to do that.
Stuff, yes.
That seems important.
But the leadership and the management of people and the, I don't know, strategic thinking and that kind of stuff, like Yeah, you're right. That's a learned experience over time. And even if, Don, even if you came to me and you're like, Diana, here is my biggest piece of wisdom. It is whatever you said. I would still have to learn that on my own, right? It would be in my mind, but to use that and apply that, I would have to learn how to do that. So,
Yeah.
like, even if you're just going to tell everybody everything that you know, you could download everything you know to someone and they'd still have to learn it themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So we've talked about like giving people experiences. We've talked about why it's important to think about replacing yourself. If you are a manager on a team, you're going to be by getting other people excited about your job and learning your job. It should be, if you're working for a good company, they should see a leader of people, which is the thing that most companies value the most. Like if you can lead a team and make yourself less important, most companies value that. And the ones that don't, and honestly get rid of people like that, like leave them, go. Be blessed that your employer showed you who they are. Great. Go find another job, right? Go do that. If you can really do that, if you have that skill set, you'll find something else. You will find something else. Then we've also talked about like for business, if you own it, it's important to not be stuck in the middle of it because it won't be worth as much. The last piece that we want to talk a little bit about is in the transitions on the family-owned businesses. What kinds of dynamics come into play if we start thinking about family-owned businesses? And I know we've all worked with the family-owned businesses before.
Family is a whole other beast because it's not just my boss, it's my boss and my brother, or my boss and my dad, or whatever, my boss and my sister, like all of that just adds a layer of complexity, and you don't want to mess with it. You don't want to hurt that. So it adds a real tough layer there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Diana's dog started barking when she said beast. I heard that as
That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, to all of that, you can probably hear our implications here, but I mean, I think we're not saying like don't do it, but also like know what you're getting into. If you're within a family business and you want to maintain this as a family business, where the family is working within the business too. And I think making sure that roles are really clear, of where everybody plays and where they don't play, I think is very, very important in that, just so that there's no question, because I think that's where it gets sticky sometimes as people start jumping into areas that they're not, that's not helpful, because they think, oh, okay, well, it's our family's business. And so I can kind of move into any position, I can move anywhere, I can have any say within any part of the business. And so I think one early recommendation, low hanging fruit, is just make sure everybody's roles are super clear along the way.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Family businesses are less likely to communicate with each other about those key issues. And even though they spend more time together, like the number of families who it's like, oh yeah, we went on vacations together and we eat dinners every, 3 nights a week or whatever. We do all these things. And then we'll go in and ask, and like, have you ever talked about how you're going to transition the business? Or have you ever talked about what role you play versus what role you play? Or does this other person want to get into the business? Do you ever talk about that stuff? And a lot of the most common answers, no. And then I say, why don't you want to talk about that? And it's like, because we're having a nice dinner, right? We're just hanging, we're on vacation. I don't want to ruin the vacation. I don't want to get into these conversations because it could be risky, which creates some problem. The other dynamic I think in the family business side is if your last name is of the name of the business, then you learn really quickly what the difference between management and leadership is, right? So like the management side of things, like yes, you might have a position, like if let's say you're a mid-level manager, but you're the son of the owner or the daughter of the owner, right? But you're in the mid-level management position. People, because of your name, you're elevated in terms of your influence. Like you are more influential to other people just because of who you are and just because they know that, which is not fair if you're trying to do a good job and just trying to work your way up, right? We talk to a lot of people, families, members who are in that position, and they're like, they treat me differently because of who I am, and I don't like it. There's an expectation that's higher, which is all true. You also have to recognize as the family member that you're more influential. You can't just go to somebody and casually say, "Oh, I don't think we should do this," because they're going to hear, maybe my boss is telling me that. So you have to be really, really careful. The family-owned businesses, communication is just really, really key, I think. And we're really passionate about those. And we work with a lot of those because I think we go and have the difficult conversations and let's facilitate that conversation. And also, I think that families that do really well, we've got one that we just started working with recently, and they're going to work on something that's kind of cool, is their own family vision, mission, values, separate from the company's. So now like the company, this is what we hold valuable, but as a family, this is what we hold valuable. So you can those become kind of the thou shalts on both sides. So now you know what decisions you can make and what decisions you can't make. Kind of a guide for you. So, well, I'm going to transition into our closing here. How about this? We're using the word transition a lot. What final words of wisdom? Let's do that. We'll go around the horn here and final words of wisdom for people listening. If you're thinking of what was some of your takeaways from the talk, we'll leave it very open.
I feel like I say this every single podcast, but it's communication and expectations and clarity. Like, communicate your expectations clearly all the way around. And it will just help. It helps everybody. Like a broken record. Communicate your expectations clearly.
And then do it, and then communicate it
And
clearly.
then do it again.
And then do it again.
Keep doing it. Just
That's
keep
good.
doing it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think which direction. So maybe we'll go both sides of it too. But I mean, I think just from working with people who are getting ready to retire or to hand their business over or whatever it is, don't be afraid. Like, don't be afraid of the next generation. Like, loop them in. That's the best way to get them ready for that position. So to kind of reduce the fear that you have about that generation is to loop them in. The further divide that you create, the more fearful you're going to be about them taking over. And they will take over, whether you like it or not, because of all the things that we just talked about. They're the next generation. They're here. They're a part of our businesses, and they're going to be stepping into leadership roles sooner rather than later. And so the best thing that you can do is just to loop them in and take them under your wing. And then I think for maybe the younger generation or more, people who are still kind of developing up into their careers and wondering what that's going to look like. Go ask the questions, but have a good understanding of where you want to go to. So if you are going and asking your boss, like, what does growth look like? And you feel really open-minded about that, I think that's fine. But also if you have an idea of where you want to go and the things that you want to learn, that's also going to help your boss put you, like, kind of direct you in the right ways within your organization too. So those would be my pieces of feedback.
Yeah, I love those. Those are great. What strikes me on this conversation is, again, it kind of goes back to what Diana said. She's like, I feel like I say this on every podcast. What we have done with the podcast episodes, if you've been listening to this for a long time, is we have 200 and something different situations of which to use the same principles around. And those same principles really are the same things. It's do you know what your role is? Are we communicating with each other? Do we hold people accountable? Are we meeting people where they are? Do we know that we have a common definition of winning? Those are the best practices that we keep going back to that help all of these different areas. And the reason that they help all of these different areas are because it's humans that are doing the work. It's people. That's why we call it people centric. It's the idea that communication, when we talk to each other, we know what winning looks like and we're on the same team, we will perform better than if we don't. And it's when we don't know those things that the transitions fail and we struggle, or the families break up because they didn't have the conversations, or the manager leaves and no one's ready to fill their spot. All those different scenarios. So yeah, in all of these different episodes, we keep going back to the core, but we keep applying it to different situations to learn. That's what strikes me in terms of these things. So yes, you'll hear us talk about communication again in a future podcast, because no business ever has come to me and said, boy, we've got this figured out, including People Centric, including our own business. Like one of our missions, one of our goals this year for strategic planning is to become the most people-centric company in the world. And we're working towards that. And we've got a ways to go. Like, we're still working on that stuff. So we're working. It's just a pleasure to get to work on that with you all. No one's got it all figured out. So thanks a lot for listening to the podcast. If you have questions, send us questions. We love it. Send us fan mail, send us candy, flowers, whatever you like, whatever stuff you like to send us. We can be horribly bribed, and then we'll pick an episode and we'll give you a shout out on the podcast.
Or if you just ask a question, we might just pick your question and give you a shout out anyway.
Oh, Oh, okay. We can simplify it. You can just ask the question. Turns out you can just ask the question. You don't have to bribe us. We'll just do it. So thanks, Diana. Thanks, Bethany. We had a great time, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.